This is amazing. Frank Giglio. Frank Giglio is a classical trained chef from the New England Culinary Institute. Now, he wasn't trained to do this there, I assure you, but he acquired a lot of amazing skills in that amazing institute that he's transferred over to here. So anybody a really good cook, like regular food cook, they can make an omelet, you can cook up, whatever, pizza. Well, imagine being able to take those culinary skills and transferring them over to here, so you're making things that taste just as good as an omelet or as a pizza, but instead of having it give you indigestion or gout or gonorrhea or whatever, you're eating things that are making you feel amazing, right? Frank said, so this institute, he was also a graduate of the Institute of Integrative Nutrition in New York City. So Frank says that all I really want to do is make good food, simple, fresh, and whenever possible, local, prepared with good intentions. Chef Giglio has his own amazing product line that can be found at the exhibitor hall. And if you haven't seen those spices, you need spices to make good food, right? How do we make those things? Well, you don't have to worry about that because Frank has them all made for you, and they taste phenomenal. He's one of the best chefs I've ever tried. Frank is a true elixir creator extraordinaire. Please, everybody, stand and welcome the amazing chef, Frank Giglio! Woo! Thanks, bro.
All right, thank you. So today we're going to get a little elixir action, and quick raise of hand, anybody enjoy coffee? It's okay. All right. How many people know that coffee might not be the best food for them, but they still drink it every day? All right. So like what David says a lot, it's all about working with your current situation with food. So, to completely say we're never going to drink coffee again is maybe a little touchy, and some people might have a little standoff and fight. So we're going to use some medicinal foods, incorporating the knowledge we learned from Paul and from David. Through the year or through the weekend, we can create a medicinal beverage that gives us that coffee-like boost and is nutritious as well. So what I've done is I've created this chaga tea, and it looks like coffee. It's nice and dark and rich. And so this is the chaga right here. And we harvest this in New Hampshire and Maine and Vermont. And then you could take this thing, which looks like a burnt piece of wood, and put it into a pot with water and simmer that and make a tea. And so after 20 minutes, you end up with this really black, rich, vanilla-like taste. So we're going to use that as our base, and then we could add in all our ingredients and make a tasty elixir. So one of the things, if you don't have the fresh mushroom, that's how we could get incorporating with using some of these capsules. So with creating elixirs, there's a few parts. And the first thing we want is the base. And so the base is usually, for me, a tea base, which could be any medicinal mushroom or herb. And then we're going to create like a nut milk from that, and then flavor it and sweeten it to our taste. So if we don't have the fresh mushrooms, it's okay. We could just start incorporating some of these capsules. So some people just really don't like swallowing the capsules. So this is a good way to get that medicinal beverage in here. If you do want the coffee, you could brew your pot of coffee and use that as part of the base, and then we could add in all the cacao and the mushroom products, and that'll help offset the acidity of the coffee. So it's a good way of like weaning yourself off, where you're not just drinking straight coffee every day. You're adding in all these herbs and medicinal components to make it like a powerful elixir. So really simply, we're just going to take our base, which is our tea. We're going to start with about a quart. And we have a slideshow, so I was going to do a little quick. Here's my website. Check it out. So this is what the mushroom looks like on the tree, which is pretty interesting. This is in New Hampshire. And you just pop that thing off, then you dry it in the dehydrator, and you have this huge stash.
It's called the chaga.
Chaga mushroom, yep. And it naturally contains vanilla-like substances. And this is something I've found, actually David sent this to me, and this was from a website. It says, my grandparents are Maine Penobscot Native Americans and drink chaga every day. They're aged 102 and 105 and still healthy. They attribute health and long life to chaga. So this is something that's been used for centuries, and is revered as the mushroom of immortality. So here's me, super psyched to make some mushroom tea. And my wife takes these pictures, and I make an ass of myself, but it's okay. So here's our recipe. So we have our mushroom tea, and then this is where it gets to be completely individualized, where I like using cashews. Some people might not like cashews or find they're not easy to digest, so we could use hemp seeds, or we could use almonds or pecans, whatever we like. I like cashews or hemp seeds because they usually blend up well enough that you don't have to strain it. So if you were using almonds or pecans, after you soak them, you would want to simply put that in here and blend it and make your nut milk, and then strain that off and set aside the pulp, and then you put that liquid back in here. So I'm using the cashews because we can go pretty much start to finish without having to strain and get rid of those fibers. So roughly per cup, I do about a heaping tablespoon. So about 1 heaping tablespoon per cup of liquid. So this is going to be for a quart of tea base, a quarter cup, or roughly. So, all right, so we have our cashews in here. Now we're going to add a little vanilla. And this is vanilla powder, which Ultimate Superfood brings us, and it's a whole bean that's ground. So it's different from a vanilla extract, or it's different from just cutting this and scraping it. What I do when I have the fresh is I scrape out the inside, use it in my drinks, and then the skin goes into the tea. So you get the flavorful tea, so you're not using that. If you do have these, you could always put it, the skin in agave or honey, whatever your sweetener of choice is, and let it just sit in there, and it'll flavor your sweetener. So we're going to go with about a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And this really aromatic, so this is a flavor component that I want to taste. I don't want just a hint of vanilla. I want to really taste that. So we add that in there. Next, we're going to add a little bit of cacao. So these are cacao beans, and I'm going to use about a quarter cup, and I like to use the peeled ones. And they're just going to go in there. If you just have cacao powder, totally fine. You could pop it right in there. It's going to work great. Sometimes, if you don't have a high-powered blender like the Vitamix or like a Blendtec, it might not blend so well in like the Oysterizer or just a everyday home one. So the powder might work a little bit better, so you don't end up with so much grit. Or if it's really gritty, you could just strain that afterwards. So once the cacao's in there, now we'll get a little bit of coconut oil. And now, the key component, anyone ever drink like a fruit smoothie, banana, strawberry, and it's really tasty, but 20 minutes later, you're kind of still wanting more. It's not so satiating because it doesn't have that fat in there. Now, we're always hearing that fat is bad, too much fat. We don't want too much fat, but fat is, if we can get a good quality fat, it could satiate enough and give us the really rich nutrients that we don't keep wanting more. So I can make this drink, and I make it fat enough that it helps last, and I could go for 4 to 5 hours without having to keep eating. So that's a key factor, is to get those fats in there to make it rich, and it really like fills the gut, and it kind of gives us some nourishment. So although we had the cashews in there, I like to add coconut oil because, one, it's really beneficial, a good saturated fat source. It's antimicrobial, antifungal. Any candida and sugar issues, we could start using this, and it'll help combat that. But also, oils, if coconut or cacao butter, we could add that, and it kind of helps round out all the flavors. So when I'm making drinks, I always put a little coconut oil, and that helps round it out, so it just kind of gives it a smooth taste all around. So we'll put a big heaping tablespoon in there. And then pinch of salt, always, even with desserts, a pinch of salt helps really brings out all the flavors. So I like adding that. And then we're going to add a little bit more mushrooms. So kind of adding a little bit to this. This is our base recipe. And from here, we could add numerous things, make lots of changes, and just build it up to this really powerful food. So I'm going to take a couple of these capsules. This is the My Community. And we'll just pop a few in there. And then we're going to take a couple chaga capsules as well, and we'll add that. My community is the Paul Stamets blend of 17. It was also known as Host Defense. So this is his blend of 17 medicinal mushrooms. And so, like I said, if you don't have mushrooms, fresh mushrooms to make tea, you could just use some of these capsules. And with tree mushrooms, what I've learned is there's really not so many, you have a lot of luck with harvesting tree mushrooms because there's only one known tree mushroom that's poisonous, and that's the jack-o'-lantern, and it glows in the dark. So mostly every tree mushroom has some medicinal properties. This is a Florida reishi that a friend sent to me, and this is a chaga. These are kind of revered as the really high potent medicinal mushrooms, but even the simple birch polypore or some of the other ones that you see all have some medicinal properties. So David describes it as like the king, queen, and pawn. Some are like way up here, and some are a little bit below, but they'll all have some medicinal properties. So, yeah.
If we don't have a chaga-based tea, how many capsules would we add?
I usually start with 2. Sometimes it could be a little bitter, but I go maybe 2 to 4. Yeah. If you don't have, how many capsules to start with? If you don't have a tea base, how many capsules would you add? I usually go 2 to 4. You know, some are sometimes a little bitter, so you have to just kind of work with that.
Is that 2 to 4 for 1 cup of water?
For like a 4-cup blender, for like this amount, I'd add like 2 to 4. So.
If you were using the tree mushroom, how much of that would you take out?
Well, it depends. I usually have a big tea going in a crock pot. So I have my crock pot going, so there's always tea, and I just kind of go like that. Yeah. And then just another thing, we're going to be raffling off some maca powder, so I thought we'd put a little bit in here. And this is a good, like, endurance and help sustaining. It's a known aphrodisiac, so that's always good to get in there. And we'll add a big heaping tablespoon. And it's great for women. It's a hormonal balancer. It's adaptogenic herb, so it's a great one to add in there. So we're going to give this a quick blend, then we're going to add in our sweetener, and then we're good to go. So let's give it a quick crank. All right. So that's nice and blended. And now, I'm a honey fan. I'm also a maple syrup fan because that's what's fresh and local in New England. So I like add that, but it's, sugar, so you have to be mindful. If you're dealing with candida issues, it's something we're going to need to eliminate. So what I've gotten into doing is using a little bit of stevia as well as a sweetener. So sometimes if you're just using stevia, it's sometimes a little too medicinal tasting, or it just doesn't have that sweetness you're looking for. But if you're just using honey, you're using a ton of it, and then that's when you have the sugars. So if you could slowly incorporate less and less of the sugars and acquire that stevia taste or a xylitol taste, it'll work a little bit better for you. So I have the green leaf stevia. So this is whole, dried, and ground, as opposed to the white powder or the liquid. This has trouble dissolving in a lot of drinks. That's why a lot of people end up with this like green floaties on top. So it's not always palatable. So we'll just add about a teaspoon in there. And again, this is all to taste. And then we're going to take some more honey. And this is Noni Land's black gold honey, which is really nice. And I'm going to add a couple tablespoons. And we're going to give it a blend, give it a taste, and then we'll go from there. Yep.
Can you mix another sweetener with the stevia to calm down that stevia taste? Oh. I was asking, can you mix another sweetener with the stevia to kind of tone down the stevia aftertaste?
Like the honey, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
just with the white powder, sometimes it just easily dissolves, and it gives it that sweetness. I just find when we're on a no sugar diet and we're trying to make things sweet with stevia, it ends up tasting medicinal. So it's just a challenge of getting in that mindset. Stevia is not going to taste as honey or as sweet as honey, so we don't want to keep dumping it in to try to give it that sweetness. So you just have to find the balance of where it gives it that sweet tone, but it's not overly medicinal. I don't know if that helps, but.
Yeah.
All right. So we have our sweetener in there. Give it a blast and taste it again. This works great when we have warm tea, and then we can make a warm chocolate drink. So it's basically like a medicinal mushroom hot chocolate. And it's just absolutely unbelievable. This has become a staple in New England when you get weeks of, 15 degrees and it's snowing and you're not leaving. It's like, okay, we drink mushroom chocolate tea all day. So we just get a little taster cup. Thank you. Just want to give it a little taste. That's good. All right. So one thing we could do with the beans, sometimes it gets a little bit gritty. So what you could do is just take your fine mesh strainer and pour it over there. And you strain it through and you have a nice clear or liquidy thin drink. Or I kind of like the chunky, so I don't mind it so much. So we just take this and we'll just pour it off and we'll give everybody a taste, or as many as we can. All right. Want to help pass? Oh, we got it. She asked if this drink is warm. This is kind of room temperature, but normally I would make this not scalding hot like a boiling liquid, but nice in 100 degrees or so, just so it takes the chill off. Especially, if it's a warm climate, you might not want a hot drink, but in the colder climates, I'll definitely heat that up.
Can't you just mix it up in the Vitamix until the Vitamix?
Yeah, you can. The longer, with anything, making soups or drinks, the longer you blend it, the warmer it's going to get. Absolutely. So, yeah.
So when you warm it, do you warm it if you were having it warm?
Mhm.
Do you warm it after you make it, or just keep the tea warm? And when you make
Yeah, the tea, I would keep the tea warm. So what we have is a crock pot. This is the easiest method for me in my home is I have a crock pot, that we usually make our stews and chilies out of. I keep that stock pot with tea, and that's always changing. And we wake up in the morning, we crank it on high, and then the tea gets hot, then we put it on low, and then all day we have available tea. So instead of having the kitchen, and it uses less electricity than having the stove top on all day, so that tea is always there. So if you, just want to have tea and you put your sweetener in there and drink it like that, or we could use it as a base. Well, this just made about 4 to 5. Okay.
Could you ask everyone just to wait for the microphone?
Okay. Any questions? We'll wait for the microphone, stand up, and holler. Okay.
Hello? Yeah. How many servings would
Well, this, my eating habits change as far as the amount of food I eat, but this, I started with the base of 1 quart of liquid, and then I added everything else, so it probably made about 5 cups. So this is something I would make in the morning, and I would just drink it until maybe the afternoon. So this is not something I'm just gonna chug. I'm gonna be, I get in the morning, maybe I go for a run or a walk in the neighborhood, then I make my drink, and then I'm checking emails and I'm just sipping it over the next few hours. So, but this would probably make easily for 2, for someone who just wanted to sit and have 1 drink. But for me, this becomes like the breakfast and kind of lunch. Yeah, you're welcome. Question?
Just about making the chaga tea.
Yes.
What piece? How big is the piece of chaga?
Usually I start with, say the size of a softball that I've broken up into smaller pieces. The smaller you can get it, the easier you're going to get the extractions out of it. And so, well, I would take a softball and start with a half gallon of water. Try to find the best water you can. And then there's so many different ways. A lot of herbalists will say you need to really boil that liquid down and really extract those properties out of it. Some people say just slow and low, just simmer it. So I kind of do a little in between. I usually bring it up to nearly a boil, then I lower the heat, and just let it simmer. And then with the chaga, it's different because it'll look like this continuously. So you have that soft ball, and you could just brew that and keep brewing it and brewing it and brewing it. And you might get 6 to 8 brews out of that one piece of chaga. So it's really has a lot of substance in there, and it's like has that woody quality. So you really have to pull out a lot of that flavor. So, you get maybe nearly 5 to 6 gallons. Thank you. So you maybe get 5 or 6 gallons of that tea at the end. Yes.
Would you substitute reishi?
Yeah, reishi would be absolutely wonderful. You can get, if you don't have access to finding reishi in your community, you can go right online to like Mountain Rose Herbs or even Ron T. Jing Herbs has the whole bulk bin of reishi. And so you can go there, you can just take a handful. Reishi tends to be bitter, so you have to be a little, you don't want to dump it in because the tea could be a little too bitter for you, but you can get the bulk reishi and you could just add that in, or we get the birch polypores. I have a red belted polypore over there, and really anything I could find, I'll add, if we're doing a no sugar thing, we could add some pau d'arco tea, and we can mix that in there. We could throw goji berries in there. I love shaga with coconut, goji berries, vanilla, and a little pau d'arco. And just naturally on its own, it's very, very sweet. So we'll go with that one, and then you, and then here.
Hi, good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
If you don't have easy access to this, what would you suggest? What's the best way to find this? What's some of your favorite sources for this?
For the mushroom?
Yeah, for the mushrooms.
Well, if you can't find it, I do sell it. I harvest it and sell some, so you could always look at my website, and that's frankgiglio.com. But if you don't have the access to find it in your neighborhood, they grow on birches, almost exclusively on birch trees. So if you don't live, if you live in Arizona, you're not going to find many birch trees. But I would just start with the capsules. This is a great way to just start getting those mushrooms in. You won't have the deep, complex flavors that doing an extraction from the mushrooms that you can get. But just starting with the capsules, it just helps to get that in there. And like I said, this is a chaga latte, and we could start with our coffee, add the rest with water, and then add those mushroom capsules at the end. So, if you could find them fresh, awesome. If not, this is a great way to start. Thank you.
You say that the fresh one,
Yep.
you dehydrate it. For how long do you dehydrate it?
Usually it takes about 24 hours because on the tree they're wet, and especially if you harvest them in the summer after a rain, it's going to be wet, and if it sits in the cupboard, it could turn to mold. It could start molding. So you just want to fully dry it out. This was probably 5 to 6 pounds when I found it, and then after it dried, it loses over a third of its weight. So it really loses a lot of its mass. Just like 115 or so. It does it takes a while. It's not going to necessarily cook it. So just low temperature drying. Yep.
So you use the dehydrator? You didn't just leave it out to dry?
Well, you can. We don't have. If you in the summers in New England, you don't get extreme heat, especially in the North Country. So if it's moist, you don't want to keep adding moisture. So just putting in the dryer, in the dehydrator, or even low temperature oven, or just letting the pilot light go in the dryer. But in a warmer climate, just sitting outside would be great. With the reishis, because they're, and this is a big, massive, hunk of mushroom, so it's going to take a heavy sun to really penetrate that. So something like this, you could just leave out in the sun, and that'll dry pretty rapidly. So, anyone else? Yes.
I live in Southern California, so if I find a tree with I live in Southern California. If I find a tree with mushrooms growing on it, am I pretty much okay?
You're pretty much okay.
As long as it's not glowing?
Yeah. From what I've learned from David, it's the floor mushrooms that you have to be mindful of. So, the floor mushrooms, it's like take a class, really learn from an expert. Okay. I'm not an expert on mushrooms, but I've been safe. I'm still here, and I've been drinking tea of a lot of tree mushrooms.
Okay.
But
then the other thing is I appreciate the capsules, but I want the real thing, the big stuff. Who sells it? I don't care about the capsules, but I want to get the whole.
Yeah, like I said, you can get the chaga from me, but also like reishi. There are sites online. I don't know. Like I said, you can get it here. The reishi, Mountain Rose Herb sometimes has it.
And the chaga from you?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a few places online that you can find it, but yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you ship to Hawaii?
Sure.
You can?
Yeah.
Folks, if you have a question, we ask that you don't holler out. You actually take the microphone, put it right underneath your chin like an ice cream cone, and talk into it. Thank you.
Right here.
If you're looking for these mushrooms out in the woods and you find them on a tree, there are poisonous mushrooms on trees, but the polypores, they're not poisonous, okay? But if you get a I mean, you got death caps, you got death angels or whatever. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but they are poisonous. But the polypores, which are real hard, they're not. So just because it's on a tree, don't think that it can't be poisonous.
Thank you.
And again, please stand because we have a live stream, so it helps with what we're doing here to support the people who are with us at home. Thank you.
Do you have recipes on your website?
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
and can you repeat your website for us, please?
Yes, thank you. It is frankgiglio.com, and that's Frank, Giglio.com. So I have a lot of recipes there, YouTube videos. I do have a recipe book that I offer, and it's a raw vegan recipe book. And then I do offer like recipe development for people and creating websites, or creating recipes for people to like individualize them for themselves. So, yeah. Any other questions? All right. Wait, one more. Right over here in the... Wait, we're going to wait for that microphone. Ice cream cone.
I don't need a microphone. Should you eat when you're... Is this like... Sometimes tea is hard on the tummy in the morning if you don't have anything in it. Or should you eat when you do this? I mean, is it the...
For me, this becomes... When I make this kind of drink, this becomes a meal. This is like my chocolate smoothie.
Okay.
So I don't find it hard on my system. And even just drinking the tea like this, I find it okay. So, I mean, everybody's different. Some people have something so rich in the morning might not be good for them.
And
so
how many cups do you drink? I mean, if you're replacing coffee with it, I'm like a 1 to 3 cup coffee person.
Well, between me and my wife, we probably drink close to a gallon of chaga tea a day.
Okay.
It gets to that level.
Okay, so a cup after cup is okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right, any more hands? One more.
When you're using a cacao and the vanilla, is it the same measures with the beans and the powder?
The bean, I would probably use a little less powder. Probably for this recipe, I would probably use about 2 tablespoons of the powder. Yep, for me, I like the bean because it's a whole food, so you're getting all the elements of the cacao properties with the bean. So you could use, instead of using the coconut oil, you could use some of the cacao butter with the powder, and then you get the whole food. But instead of the extractions with the powder and the butter, I just like using the beans. So, all right, one more.
If you have an allergy or sensitivity to mushrooms, I don't know which in particular, would that mean all mushrooms, all fungi, or would it be, just certain ones you might have allergies to?
I probably don't know the answer to that, and I wouldn't want to say go for it. But, some people that have mushroom deal with the ones that are usually store-bought, and those are kind of prone to building up fungus that's not the good fungus. So that's really like an individual kind of journey for you to see what works. Yeah, I wouldn't say go for it because, I can't do that. But, yeah. All right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.